9. Poppy Johnson. While bartender Poppy Johnson grew up in London, she developed an extreme fear of the infamous pop sensation Michael Jackson, which eventually developed into a full-blown phobia. It all started when she saw the Thriller music video, which is commonly considered one of the best music videos of all time. To Poppy, though, it was nothing short of a nightmare. Being terrified of Jackson must have been an uncomfortable situation, since her parents were huge fans of the singer and had tons of memorabilia dedicated to the man in their home. Poppy kept her irrational fear mainly to herself, even as it started consuming her. She told the UK Mirror that she was afraid people would think she was silly or that they wouldn't understand her phobia. It became so bad that she started experiencing physical symptoms like shaking and sweating, and she couldn't even handle having Jackson's name mentioned in her presence without going into complete panic mode. At times, especially during the height of the singer's popularity, Poppy found it impossible to avoid him. When the Finding Neverland documentary debuted, she couldn't even go on the internet without eventually seeing his face. She finally got the courage to open up about her fears at the age of 23, and it helped her to come to terms with the situation. Poppy was able to enroll in therapy and confront her phobia of Michael Jackson head-on. In 2019, she said she'd already noticed a remarkable difference and that people were much more understanding than she thought they'd be. 8. Mark Faulding. 49-year-old father of 5 Mark Faulding was severely claustrophobic, and that's putting it lightly. His fear was so bad that it impacted his behaviors in a way that sometimes put his safety at risk. One day in 2021, he panicked when the elevator at his apartment in West Yorkshire, England got stuck between floors. Faulding was with his friend Kevin Hodgson at the time when the elevator stalled. They pressed the emergency button and called for help, but it wasn't enough to reassure Faulding that staff members would free them. After 15 minutes, he could no longer stand the suffocating feeling of being trapped. Both men started kicking the doors and yelling in hopes that someone would hear them. They also started prying the doors open. When they saw the third-floor doors finally open up below them, Faulding tried to maneuver himself toward the opening, hoping he would land safely. He quickly disappeared, and Hodgson initially just thought his friend had made it to the floor like he intended. But soon he heard a loud bang moments later and realized Faulding had likely plummeted to his death. According to the most recent update, the investigation into the tragedy is still ongoing. 7. Abby Holgate. A young McDonald's worker from Newark named Abby Holgate was so scared of needles that she refused to get important blood work done in early 2022. At the time, she was taking a few antibiotics for some dental problems, but her health wasn't improving. This led doctors to believe she might be suffering from a more serious underlying condition. They recommended blood tests to her, but she declined and was sent home. By the time medical professionals finally convinced Abby into getting the blood work done, it was too late to treat the aggressive blood cancer she'd developed. Sadly, the cancer was too advanced for conventional treatments to have any beneficial effects, and her symptoms had become so bad that she was admitted into the intensive care unit. Just 12 hours later, the young woman suffered a tragic, fatal heart attack. While more could have been done if Abby's condition were uncovered sooner, an investigation ruled that she died from natural causes. Her grandmother, Noreen, told Nottinghamshire Live that she hoped for changes to the healthcare industry that would prevent a similar situation from happening to anyone in the future. The coroner ultimately determined that the teen's fear of needles was the biggest reason the cancer went unnoticed for so long, and that her care providers had limited control over her refusal to get blood drawn. 6. Demi Sweeney. 22-year-old Demi Sweeney suffers from extreme arachnophobia. One day in 2018, she discovered a spider inside her home in England, and no one was around to get rid of it for her. The thought of taking care of it herself was too terrifying, and letting the unwanted visitor crawl around certainly wasn't an option. So she called friends and housemates and asked if they could help, but unfortunately nobody was nearby. At a friend's request, Demi called a local food delivery service and asked if the delivery driver would be willing to get rid of the spider if she ordered food. The representative on the other end said that she could certainly ask for that service, but there were no guarantees. so she placed a Kentucky Fried Chicken order and hoped the driver didn't share her fear of spiders. Luckily, the delivery man Joe was happy to help Demi out. She later told the Washington Post that she was trying not to sound completely crazy by making the request, but in her moment of panic, she basically begged Joe to save her. He laughed and took the situation in his stride and got rid of the spider despite not being a huge fan of the creatures himself. Demi said that she thanked him a million times and that he was a hero. Even after the 8-legged intruder was gone though, she was left feeling paranoid all day. Unfortunately, that's a problem for a therapist, not a delivery person. 5. Gary HOLLIDGE. Not everyone loves Christmas, but some people are actually terrified of it. 47-year-old Gary HOLLIDGE from Kent in southeastern England has a Christmas-related phobia. He suffers from Santa phobia. Also known as clausophobia, it is exactly what it sounds like, an overwhelming fear of Santa Claus himself. HOLLIDGE told Jam Press that his Santa phobia is so bad that he's too paralyzed with fear to hang up holiday decorations. He said his terror is very specific and that he's more scared of dancing Santa figurines than he is of people dressed up as Saint Nick. The phobia dates all the way back to HOLLIDGE's childhood. It started when he was 7 years old and has only gotten worse since then. When the holidays roll around each year, he struggles with anxiety, cold sweats, clammy palms, and other symptoms of panic. He's especially put off when he thinks about how unpredictable the season can be. When he was younger and got dragged around with his mum on shopping trips around the holidays, HOLLIDGE said he waited in the car while she went into stores. His phobia also greatly complicated things at school, where he had no control over his exposure to Christmas decorations. But he managed to maintain his composure enough to not let other kids find out about his fear, since the thought of being bullied was apparently even worse than the complete horror of a dancing Santa Claus. HOLLIDGE's parents once tried to help him get over his unusual condition by filling their backyard with the scary decor, but it was a colossal failure and only made things worse. Now that he's a dad, he allows his family to decorate for the holidays, but has forbidden them from Santa-themed items. It's probably safe to assume that he opts out of Christmas-related events where he has no control over what he'll see, and that his irrational fear of Santa limits his life in ways that we wouldn't even begin to understand. 4. Tracy May. 51-year-old Tracy May makes a decent living as a psychic medium and an assistant at a dermatologist's office in Kent, England. By all appearances, she lives a somewhat normal lifestyle, but she suffers from an extreme hidden fear of haircuts called tonsillophobia. Speaking with the UK Metro, Tracy said that people often think her phobia is a joke, but that it feels very real to her, and it's certainly no laughing matter. It started when she was 25 years old, and while she isn't sure what caused it, she believes the movie Edward Scissorhands had something to do with it, or at least worsened her fear. The fact that Tracy only had haircuts at home until that age might have also influenced her phobia. She said she was traumatized by the environment at her first visit to a salon, which was very overstimulating. It caused her to have a panic attack, and she's been terrified of haircuts ever since, even though she was pretty happy with how the haircut looked at the time. Tracy works around her fears by consulting with spirits, whom she says have been speaking with and visiting her since she was a child. She also does breathing exercises, meditates, prays, and uses other common coping techniques, although she's never been able to completely calm herself down. Her husband, Ken, also keeps her company during these episodes. Tracy's biggest complaint is that she wishes people would take her fear of haircuts more seriously. She said that it might sound silly to some, but it's something she's really passionate about, especially when she sees people taking snake phobias and spider phobias seriously while hers is just a joke. 3. ZELINA VEGA. A fear of feet, also known as podophobia, is somewhat understandable if you think about it. After all, feet don't exactly smell nice, and they're often thought of as one of the dirtier body parts. It's rare for someone to be deathly afraid of feet though, but it does happen, and it's sometimes tied to an irrational fear of germs. In 2022, professional WWE wrestler Zelina Vega avoided fellow superstar Sarah Logan during her debut as Valhalla. Vega later explained during an interview on The Bump that she's extremely afraid of feet. Logan wasn't wearing shoes at the time, and it triggered her phobia. She also said that Logan's feet smelled terrible and that she could get a whiff from far away. This could perhaps explain why Vega hasn't been involved in wrestling matches since her return to WWE's weekly SmackDown program. But she reportedly has plans to come back to the ring in the near future, indicating that perhaps she's willing to overlook her foot fear for the sake of advancing her future career. 2. Darcey Croft. As a former clinical hypnotherapist, 49-year-old Darcey Croft specialized in treating people with irrational phobias. But the mother of 4 from Buckinghamshire, England, has struggled with her own fear for most of her life. When Darcey was 4 years old, a bathtub inside her mum's upstairs bathroom overflowed and caused the downstairs ceiling to collapse. No one was hurt in the accident, and barely any water was on the floor when it happened. But she was scared that it was going to kill her mother and that the house would flood. Ever since, Darcey has been terrified of overflowing containers, especially bathtubs. Backed-up toilets also have a devastating effect on her emotions, and even seeing floods on the television upsets her. Anytime her fear gets to her, she has severe panic attack symptoms. Despite the phobia, Darcey sometimes forgets that she's filling a bathtub and panics when she realizes. Speaking with the UK Metro, she said her symptoms consist of feeling weak, shallow, rapid breathing, tingling limbs and fingers, and feeling like she's going to pass out. Darcey also has a cinnamon phobia, which is even stranger than her fear of floods, since she loves the smell of the spice, yet it gives her unbearable anxiety. Whenever her fears get to her, she uses breathing techniques to calm herself. But sometimes that's not enough, and she starts to feel like she's having a real medical emergency beyond the conventional panic attack. Luckily, her family is supportive and doesn't judge or mock her during these episodes. 1. KERSTIN Shepherd. Most people would agree that Brussels sprouts are an acquired taste, but one grandmother from the UK hates them so much she can't stand being near them. When 54-year-old KERSTIN Shepherd smells the vegetable, she becomes shaky and starts sweating. And since it's a popular holiday dish in Britain, it complicates her ability to enjoy the Christmas season. As a child, KERSTIN would throw her entire meal away and remake her plate if she found a single Brussels sprout near her food. The most progress she's ever made while trying to conquer the fear came around 15 years ago when she forced herself to eat one. Her phobia worsened after that though, and toward the end of 2022, she said it was the worst it had ever been. To make things even more stressful, people don't seem to understand the severity of KERSTIN's terror. She said that when she was young, her family used to hide Brussels sprouts inside her food. On a handful of occasions, she didn't notice them smooshed in with her Yorkshire pudding or mashed potatoes and accidentally ate them. In her words, it caused her to shudder from head to foot. Because of this, she made it a habit to thoroughly check her plate every time before eating, especially at holiday gatherings. KERSTIN told the US Sun that she dreaded Christmas dinner. Whenever she became nervous or panicked over Brussels sprouts, her relatives downplayed her suffering and told her she was being ridiculous for getting upset. At that point, KERSTIN had said she had tried everything possible and that there was simply nothing more she could do to defeat her fear of Brussels sprouts. She refuses to cook them for anyone, but realizes that she won't be able to avoid them entirely unless she wants to spend Christmas alone. Thanks for watching. Would you rather have an irrational phobia of an everyday item or have an obsessive-compulsive habit that's impossible for others not to notice? Let us know in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe. See you soon.